Sam.
Hello. Hey,
Welcome.
there we go. All right.
There it is.
Hello.
Sam, thanks for being here.
Man, it's so great to be here and seeing all these people. It's kind of like a live podcast, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Is that a little too millennial? Sorry.
You know, I don't get to see you in person often because you're in Illinois, but I almost see a selfie of you almost every day on LinkedIn.
You're welcome.
So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
When you have a face like this, you don't want to hide it. Yeah. But no, I'm very active on there. And yes, I am from Northern Illinois, but not Chicago. Okay, we got to make that distinction.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, you and I have some history together. And more recently, you teamed up with the 10-4 Truck Insurance Group, who happens to be a sponsor and the largest partner of Bulk Insurance Group for our insurance brokerage. So really cool to see worlds collide and how we've worked together with the 10-4 team, and now you're a part of that. So if you could, real quick, before we get in too deep, just give us high level about your background and what you're doing specifically for 10 role in your 10-4 in your role today.
Sure. Yeah, no, so I was born and raised in the trucking industry. My father was a driver, and then when I was born, he got off the road and then just started dispatching and then climbing the ranks from there, got up to VP of operations and general manager and stuff like that. And I got to go along for the ride, whether I wanted to or not. So, I mean, some of my fondest memories are in the old trucking industry or in the old trucking terminals with just a haze of cigarette smoke. And I don't think you could officially say that you're from the trucking industry unless you've seen a dispatcher light a cigarette with an already lit cigarette. I know, I see some heads nodding out there. You know what I'm saying. So I was born and raised in this industry, and when I got to a working age, my father said, well, you can do whatever you want. And I said, well, I have all this knowledge of trucking. I might as well just stay in trucking. And it's a great industry. I absolutely love this industry, okay? And one of my goals with safety and all that is to keep this industry the way it is, grow in the technology piece and all that kind of good stuff, but keep the heart of it as well. And so that's what I try to get across to trucking companies when I do safety and compliance, because, and we'll get into this in a little bit, how important safety and compliance is to a trucking company and the health of it. So, but I have kind of a unique perspective when it comes to the safety piece, because I came from the operation side. Like I have started, or my father started a trucking company, and because I was the one that could turn my computer on the fastest, he said, well, you get to set up everything then. So filed the paperwork, hired the drivers, dispatched, did the paperwork, or collected the paperwork, paid the drivers, all that kind of good stuff. So I have literally seen a company from the cradle to the grave, and that gives me what I think, a very unique perspective in the trucking industry and the safety piece of it especially.
So before you were with 10-4, because that's relatively, when did you come on with 10-4?
I came on with 10-4 officially in September of this year.
So relatively new. Before that, you had previously actually worked with a few of the bulk loads clients. Walk us through what you were doing and kind of what the services that you provide, and now how are you doing it for 10-4?
Yeah, so safety and compliance, and I know as soon as you see the word safety and compliance, usually I see a lot of eye rolls. That's when usually people need to take a bathroom break, so I appreciate you guys sticking around. But it's really an important piece, and quite frankly, it's a piece that confuses a lot of people, but it doesn't have to. It really isn't that confusing of a topic as long as you know what to look for. And that's what I try to help companies out with, is saying, okay, if you're having issues with, you're getting pulled over and you're getting vehicle maintenance issues, okay, are we doing pre-trips? Are the drivers doing pre-trips? If we're having hours of service issues, have we as the carriers instructed the drivers on the correct hours of service rules that are out there? I know a lot of times drivers will chat with other drivers, and that's how a lot of misinformation gets passed down. And there's a lot of that correction that I have to do with companies and say, I understand what you think is right, but here's actually what is right. And so a lot of my stuff that I do before coming on with 10-4 and now with 10-4 is looking at the companies and evaluating, okay, we can see that you're having issues with your CSA scores in this way. This is the steps that you need to now take to get those scores back to what we call under the threshold.
Sure, that's great. Great information. I want to touch real quick on non-domiciled CDLs and CDL mills. I know this is something that you've dug into quite a bit. Can you give us some high-level information on exactly where we're at as an industry today,
Mhm.
and where it's going? We see a lot of press and media right now.
Yeah.
And we talked about it earlier as well. From a trucking and risk perspective, give us a little insight on what's happening in the market.
Yeah, so the non-domiciled CDL is really a hot topic right now. And I will say this, and we're not going to get political, but this administration is doing a lot of work when it comes to that. And I appreciate that because there is a lot of work that needed to be done. There was a lot of bad actors that are now getting seen and getting out of the market, which is what needed to happen. So, you're mentioning too the CDL mills. There's a big difference between the CDL mills and CDL schools, and I don't know, what the definition technically is, but we all kind of know what the differences are. The CDL mills are there just to get guys a CDL, get them on the road, all that kind of stuff. CDL schools will teach them a little bit more. The thing that I always tell trucking companies when it comes to your drivers, these guys and girls, don't get me wrong, these people, these drivers are out there representing your company. So you want to have the best drivers representing your company out there. So there's a lot of talk, and we're talking about before with the tankers, going and putting them through a school once they get hired. That is such an important piece, even if they don't need to do like a road test, a simple road test. We've all heard the phrase, you don't have to do a road test in lieu of a CDL. That's cute, but it's really, if you have the capability to perform a road test with any driver you bring on, that will tell you so much about that driver. I loved doing road tests when I was working actually in a trucking company because yes, the driver has a CDL, but does he know how to back up? Or do they know how to back up? Does that driver know how to do a roundabout? I had a perfect route when I did it because we did a roundabout, we had a backing up thing, we had stoplights, we had 4 lanes, we had 2 lanes. It was perfect. And I will tell you, it's a really awkward and uncomfortable conversation after that road test, and you go, buddy, you don't know how to drive. Like, you can't do it. Or they'll get into we had a 13 speed and automatics, and they would get into a 13 speed thinking they knew what they were doing, and I had one guy grind every gear possible. I said, before you destroy my truck, let's pull over and let's end this right now. So they're like with the CDL mills at schools, that's great. If they have a valid CDL, that's great. But remember, these drivers are going into your vehicles. These drivers are going to be driving under your authority. You want to make sure that you have the right drivers in there. You want to make sure you have the best drivers in there so that you can avoid issues down the road.
So from an insurance perspective, when you see, you were working independently before, and now you're working directly for an insurance, somebody that has the ability to say, yes, I'm going to write this account for this amount of money, or no, I don't want to look at it. When you're looking and reviewing the safety and compliance, what are the few things that stick out immediately as red flags?
Sure. So some of the big things. So when they have a company come to us and say, "Hey, we want to provide insurance," the first thing I will look at is the CSA data. That is what the FMCSA has, the program they put in place to judge trucking companies, basically. And there's 7 different categories in there. And now that I'm up on stage in front of people, I can't think of all 7 categories. You got your driver fitness, you got your hours of service, you got hazmat, you got the crash indicator, and the others. So the first thing I always look at is those categories. And the beautiful thing about what the FMCSA is doing is all of this is public information. And that's another thing that a lot of times carriers will come to us and say, how in the world do you know, like, I got a violation 2 years ago? Like, it's on the internet. Anybody could. I don't have a special pass for anything. I'm going to public information and looking. And so if a carrier comes to us and say, hey, we want to, we want insurance with that, I'll start going digging into that CSA data, that's public information, and start looking at patterns. Okay, are we having issues? And keep in mind, if you're having issues, that's not an automatic no. It just means, okay, what kind of plan can we put in place to get these issues taken care of? Because everything's fixable. I mean, there's very few times in a trucking company I'll look at them and go, "Whew, you should probably just shut the doors." Okay, there's a lot of times where it's like, okay, like I said before, you have vehicle maintenance issues. All right, are we doing pre-trips? Do the drivers know what to look for? Are these some of the big things too? Are the vehicle maintenance issues things that drivers can catch, or is it something deeper like brakes and stuff like that? Sometimes drivers don't know what to look for when it comes to that, and the FMCSA is actually looking at changing. It's been proposed out there of changing the vehicle maintenance thing to driver observed and basically mechanic observed, and hopefully that comes out soon. I don't know when, but hopefully it'll come out soon. But so we're just looking for patterns in that and saying, okay, we see these issues coming up. Here is a plan that can get these issues resolved. And the thing that kind of frustrates carriers, and I get it because again, I've been on the carrier side, actually running these trucks, is that there is no silver bullet. It's not it's like a credit score. And so you put a plan in place and then, sometimes they'll say, well, next month we're still high. Well, yeah, okay. It just takes time to come down. But if you can keep going with that pattern, and that involves driver coaching, making sure they know what they're looking for. It means maybe putting in different procedures. It means maybe bringing, I had one a while ago that I was looking at where they just literally brought in all the trucks back in and did an annual inspection because they were having so many vehicle maintenance issues. They said, all right, we're just going to run them back through and get them all looked at. And now they're running fine, So sometimes you have to take some drastic measures, but if I'm looking at a company, I'm looking at the patterns. Where are the pain points and what can we do or what kind of recommendations can we make to help those?
What's your role after you make the recommendation? So we see this a lot on the insurance side where somebody had a rough year, maybe their cab doesn't look great, they've had some losses. We go to you guys, we go to 10-4 and say, hey, we know this guy is a good guy, it's been a tough year. We need you guys to write this for us. It needs to be affordable.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we get you coming back and saying, okay, here's what implementation actually looks like. Because I think we've gone through the whole industry, I think most carriers recognize that there's maybe an issue. Mm-hmm. I think where we see the fruit is after there's a plan that actually gets implemented to actually drive scores down. So what's your role in the actual implementation? Does it affect the insurance with 10-4?
Yeah. So my father had a saying that he always told me, inspect what you expect. So you're saying implement, that's half of the battle. And the fine folks at 10-4 are probably sick of me saying this, but my big saying is implement and monitor. Like that's a big thing, okay? If you see problems, if you see hours of service problems or driver fitness problems, vehicle maintenance, implement the procedure or implement the change and then monitor. That's where I see a lot of times companies come up short as they go, okay, we put a new process in place, great. And then the scores keep staying the same because they've never held the drivers accountable for anything. But that's the other half, okay? That you got to put the plan in place and then work the plan. Okay, and so one of the things that I help out with is we'll make the recommendations and say, hey, you should do this, and then I'll kind of just keep an eye because again, it's all public information. I'm not diving into anything that nobody in this room can look at. So I just kind of keep an eye and say, okay, you're either heading in the right direction because it's got a great little flow chart on there too, so you can see if it's going good or going bad. And just say, okay, we put this in place, that's working, great, keep that up. Or we put it in place and go, okay, something still isn't right here. Are you communicating this? Are you, what are you doing at the carrier level, not even at the driver level, but do the drivers know that you're serious about this? And so sometimes that's a conversation we have to have.
Oh, we're running out of time, but I want to hit a few key questions. So cab reports.
Sure.
When I first got into insurance, the cab had not come out yet.
Yeah.
And about 2 years in, all of a sudden this cab report came out, and it changed the entire insurance landscape.
Yeah.
Especially accounts that used to get written at really affordable, reasonable rates. Now there was these underwriters that were going through and saying, hey, this doesn't fit. It's an automatic decline, and so it's changed the landscape, and it's pulling off the public data that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. For the carriers in the room that maybe don't have the time or the resources to stay up to date with the cab on a weekly or a monthly basis, what's the first step that they should implement in terms of getting familiar with where they're doing well, where they're not doing well? who's I'd plug our agency. Obviously, that's something that we'd want to help with our insureds, but not every agency has that capability. So, what's the first kind of step to start monitoring it and executing a plan?
Yeah. So the first thing that I always did when I would go to a company is let's see the foundation. Okay. I want to see the good, bad, and the ugly. And that's a difficult thing to do. And that's honestly, that's why a lot of times I wouldn't even go speak to the owner because they all have rose colored glasses on. I would want to speak to the operations guy, or even if they had a safety person, that's who I would speak to and say, all right, where is the bottom? What are you struggling with? I don't want, well, I think we're okay here, or maybe not great here. Like, I want the good, bad, and the ugly. That's the first step. A lot of times it's kind of twofold. One, a lot of carriers don't know that that information is out there. I remember when I saw my first CAP score as a carrier, I questioned my insurance guy. I'm like, where in the world did you get this information? And then he told me about CAP, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyways, that's a longer story. But so the information is out there, and they might not know. And two, if you do know about it, you can't hide from it. Okay, you can't bury your head in the sand. It's reality. So look at your numbers, look at where your pain points are, and then come up with the plan from there. It's all about just kind of identifying, self-identifying, or bringing in somebody to look at it and say, here's where your issue is. This is what you need to do. But you have to get to that foundation. And that's what I always try to preach with different companies, is saying, get that foundation right. Now, if your foundation has got a ton of cracks in it, don't worry, we can fix that. Those can be repaired. But you got to get to that foundation first and really be honest about where you're at as a company and what you need to do going forward.
That's great. Last question here. How important is the cab as it relates to insurance premium? So we have a lot of guys that will call us at bulk loads and say, hey, my insurance going up. I just got the renewal. It's going up. I'm 30 days away. My cab's not doing great.
Yeah.
How important is getting your cab cleaned up proactively versus waiting until you get a 25% insurance renewal?
Sure.
And what's the methodology or philosophy behind it?
Yeah, so that would be a great question for some of the other 10-4 people who actually, will do that. And we've got a booth down in the main auditorium, so feel free to come on by and talk to any of the super knowledgeable people about insurance. But, to kind of answer your question a little bit about that is if you're waiting for renewal time to get stuff fixed, you're way too late. Okay, so that's why it's very important to keep on top of your safety and compliance scores throughout the whole year. Because if you're waiting for renewal time and then it comes up and you go, oh, you're high vehicle maintenance, it takes months to fix that. Like your renewal is going to come back pretty bad. But if you stay on top and you can see the trends, again, if you go on the SMS website, which come find me afterwards, I'll give you the exact web address. You can go on there and you can see the trends of every basic category you have as a carrier. And you can see if you're going up, going down, where your scores are at. That's what you have to monitor, and it gets updated every month. So that's what you have to monitor throughout the whole year so that when come renewal time, you're not surprised by anything on the cab report.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Everybody, thank you for this session. Sam will be in back. He'll be available. I would highly encourage anyone that has a compliance question or a cab question, pick Sam's brain. Also, thank you to the 10-4 team, our largest insurance partner at Bulk Insurance Group. So we appreciate you guys. We trust you guys, and we know you're doing the right thing. So thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much.